The lowest point did not arrive as a single blow. It arrived as a convergence, which is how the worst things always come, one at a time, until they are not. The arena had taken her certainty. The task force had taken her sleep. And then, from the south, on a radio line that crackled like ice under weight, came the news about her father. Tonrak was hurt, badly. The Red Lotus, the older fire, the patient one, had made its move against the chief of the Northern Water Tribe, and the man who had spent his whole life being the steady ground under his daughter's feet was now lying in a bed with healers around him, and the daughter was a continent away with her hands empty. Kaya's voice on the line was calm, the way healers are calm, which is to say, calm on the surface, and doing enormous work underneath. Korra's mother was already on her way north to the south. Kaya herself would hold the line until then, and after that she was going to Republic City to help her brother, because the Red Lotus were dangerous, and because the city was where the Avatar was, and because, as she said, with the particular gentleness that makes people want to weep, they were basically family. Korra let out a soft laugh at that. It was the only thing she could do with her face that would not betray the rest of her. When the line went quiet, the convergence closed over her head. The arena, the task force, the stripped, the city, and now her father. Every failure she had been carrying found every other failure, and they held a meeting, and the verdict was the one she had been afraid of since the South, the one that said perhaps she was not broken by circumstances, but broken by nature. Perhaps the world had been handed to the wrong girl. It was in those days that someone who stood very close to her carried a question around like a stone in the mouth, a question that would not be unasked, that could not be unasked, that waited only for the night quiet. Enough to be said. "Korra, will you ever forgive me?" The question hung in the air around the island, the way the wind had been hanging around a certain heiress, attentively, patiently, refusing to say what it wanted. And the girl it belonged to, the girl with the double ledger and the perfect smile, watched the Avatar go down to her lowest point and knew, with the clarity of a woman who has spent her life reading consequences, that some part of the weight on those young shoulders was hers. Act 1 ended there, in the bottom, in the dark, in the quiet. And Act 2, because stories are crueler than life in this one specific way, began with the Avatar standing in a training yard, failing at the one thing she needed. Airbending would not come. That was the particular knife of it. The spirits had taken the gift from the portals the moment the sky cracked open, and now even the wind itself seemed to know the trick. Spirits and new benders and children all moving through the air like it loved them. Everyone could do it except the one person the world required to do it. Korra threw herself at the training gates until her body shook, and the gates kept winning, and Tenzin, who had finally learned something about failure himself, kept suggesting rest in a voice that had stopped being a drill sergeant and started being a father. She did not rest. She was the Avatar. Resting was for people who were not forsaking a vow every time they breathed. It was Asami who said the true thing in the end. Not Tenzin, who loved the destination too much to be honest about the road. Asami, who had her own long experience of carrying a performed self, sat with the Avatar and offered the only honest map she had. It would be like this for a while, she said. There was a large chance the air would simply not open for Korra, not for a long time, and then one day it would. Not because she forced it, because somewhere along the way she would act in an airbender way, whatever that meant, and the pieces would fall into place without her noticing the moment of falling. That was how locked things worked. They opened when you stopped standing in front of the door. Korra heard it. That was the miracle. She heard it, and instead of arguing, she said the small, true thing back, that for now, she was glad to be making progress with metal bending, the one discipline nobody had ever expected of her, because it helped her feel like she was not useless. Asami's answer came faster than thought. "You are not useless." It was said with a force that surprised them both. It was the first entry in either of their ledgers that was written in both columns at once. And Korra, who had been handed philosophy by monks and arithmetic by councilmen, found that what she actually needed, in the bottom, was exactly this. A friend who did not offer hope. A friend who offered company and a map with no lies in it and a verdict on her worth delivered at full volume. The rebuilding began there. It was Korra's own idea, which was important because the girl who had arrived in the city performing perfection was gone, and in her place was someone learning to build. The new airbenders were scattered across the Earth Kingdom, confused and frightened and alone, exactly as she had been confused and frightened and alone, so she would go find them. Not as the Avatar delivering a summons, as one lost person finding other lost people. The Air Nation would not be rebuilt by a decree. It would be rebuilt by a search party. The search party, when it assembled, was exactly as chaotic as it deserved to be. Jinora, who was not an adult and was more mature than most people twice her age, handled the children, and handled them with a smile and an airship and the single most effective argument in the history of recruitment, which was the word adventure. A boy who had never left his street was offered the sky. His mother was offered reassurance. The boy got the sky. Korra handled the stubborn and learned immediately that the stubborn do not convert. A farmer named Kwon listened to the entire pitch with the expression of a man watching weather, and when it was done he announced that the only thing he planned to rebuild was his barn, that he had a family and a farm, and that he was not going anywhere. His wife from across the yard confirmed that she did not understand. The search party left with its dignity mostly intact and one fewer recruit, and Korra, who had decided the first attempt must not be a failure, learned in the space of one barnyard that a movement built on consent loses some doors, and that losing some doors is the price of being honest. Bolin handled the crowds because Bolin was born to handle crowds. Where Jinora offered adventure and Korra offered fellowship, Bolin offered a show, and the show worked, because the man had been a professional athlete and a moving picture star before he was 20, and he understood that people do not join things they fear, but they will absolutely join things that make them laugh. The airship would descend on a town, and a crowd would gather, and Bolin would give them a performance, and by the time the Earthbender had finished juggling his own dignity for their delight, half the towns knew. Airbenders were volunteering just to be near the noise. Lin handled the perimeter. The police chief stood at the edge of every gathering in her uniform, scanning for threats, and when asked about the recruitment pitch, she delivered the finest sales line of her career, which was that she was only there to make sure nothing happened to them and that the sales pitch was someone else's problem. And Asami handled Korra. She did not mean to. She would have denied it with perfect composure. But somewhere in the long weeks of the tour, in the small hours between towns, the heiress with the double ledger found that her favorite hours were the useless ones, the hours with no entry in either column. The two of them developed a game with a piece of wood, Korra throwing it, and Asami, when she thought no one was watching the wind, reaching out with the gift she still did not understand and making it fly farther than. Any arm could send it. Keep doing that, Korra laughed, and you will have her liking you in no time. I would like that, Asami said, and then her eyes went distant, the way they did when the ledgers came back into focus. I just wanted to spend some time with you. Soon we go to Ba Sing Se, and our lives become crazy again. I would like to relax a little, with you. Korra smiled at her. It was a simple smile. It was also, though neither of them had the vocabulary for it yet, the first clean entry in a ledger that was about to be rewritten entirely. The tour had its comedies, because a search party that cannot laugh is just a funeral with a schedule. Mako, left behind in the city to hold the line, had become a police officer, the way a man becomes a hostage, and his radio messages to the airship were the tour's most anticipated entertainment. The young Earthbender girl with the impossible energy sent messages of her own, including one long confession of affection that tangled itself so thoroughly between two different recipients that it had to be killed. Mid-broadcast by a sister with faster hands and no mercy. Officer Mako, the messages began, and the entire airship would lose its composure at the sheer weight of the title. It was the laughter that kept them human. They would need it. They were carrying it, though they did not know it yet, like a lantern carried into a dark that was already occupied. Because the dark was watching them. In the mountains, a scout reported to a leader with the confidence of a man who has never been wrong about eyes, that the Equalists were everywhere now. Everywhere. Even in Zaofu, the Metal Plan, the one place in the Earth Kingdom that had always been its own country, its own law, its own sealed and gleaming exception, had eyes inside it that did not belong to it. And over the whole tour, quiet as snowfall, the shadow that wore the Avatar's face kept its patient distance. It followed. It watched. And it refused, with a discipline that should have been the first warning, to come anywhere near the heiress. Asami's presence kept it away. No one had asked it why. The wind, which knew, was not telling. The Red Lotus kept its own calendar. The Equalists kept theirs. The Council kept pretending it kept one. And the airship, carrying its chaos and its lantern and its two girls with the unwritten ledger between them, banked east through the mountains and began the long descent toward the metal plan. Zaofu was waiting. Garden with its impossible pedestals was waiting. The mother and the sister and the woman who had been exiled from both were waiting, and the therapy that would close the second act had not yet been named. The second arc of the war was about to begin, in the one city that believed it could not be touched.